vulnerability has been identified in the public. It's being referred to as the Shellshock or bash code injection vulnerability, and it seems to affect the bash package specifically across a variety of Linux platforms. In a few minutes, and provide a demonstration for those customers that are running BMC BladeLogic server automation within their environments to for two things. One is to how can I quickly identify which of my target hosts are vulnerable to this particular vulnerability, and secondly, how can I then quickly remediate that vulnerability. Now, for purposes of this environment, I'm going to be focusing on the Red Hat platform, but again, this will carry over into other flavors as well. The web page you're looking at here is the publication from Red Hat that describes the vulnerability. It lists the products that are impacted by this, and it also lists a diagnostic step that users can run within their environment to very quickly identify a Linux host and to identify whether it's vulnerable or not. Now, when I show you within BladeLogic how we can very quickly run this identification, two ways we can do it. The first will be to essentially run this command against our entire target infrastructure. The second would be to run a patch analysis. Now, for those customers that don't have their patch catalogs populated within there, I'll show you the quick and dirty step on how we can do it by running an extended object with this command. Now, it has published a number of erratas that specifically deal with this particular vulnerability. You can see those erratas are here. The second way I'm going to show you within BladeLogic is by running a patch analysis scan, specifically looking for hosts that are requiring this errata and then remediating those hosts quickly. Quickly switch into my BMC BladeLogic server environment. I have 4 different hosts up here running in this virtual environment. They're all running different flavors of Red Hat Linux and different versions. And I have those objects as well modeled within my BladeLogic server environment. If I kind of expand my server inventory, I can see that all of my Red Hat virtual machines are available here. The first method I'm going to cover specifically around how to identify whether servers are vulnerable is going to cover the extended object method that I described earlier. So this will be for customers probably that don't have their patch catalogs populated, perhaps they don't have the catalog created. They just wanted an easy method to quickly identify which of my hosts are vulnerable. The way we do that is through what we call an extended object, and those of you that have BladeLogic will be familiar with this. But essentially, if I go into my configuration object dictionary, I'm just going to expand this and take a look at the extended objects. I've actually created this object here called bash injection vulnerability check. And what I've done is I've essentially copied the command that Red Hat had published as being the method to identify as the command I'm going to execute on remote targets. So I can very quickly create this object targeted for all of my Linux platforms and then run it to determine whether or not that host is vulnerable. So let me example. So I'm just going to close this. I'm going to log browse to my Red Hat Server 1 instance, and if I open the extended objects, you'll see bash injection vulnerability check is here, and as I click on it, it actually executes that command and returns a value here, whether it's vulnerable or not. Now, if it wasn't vulnerable, this line would not appear. If I open an host here, in this case, I'm going to open this repository server. Now, this is a host that I've already patched. If you look at the extended object here, you can see that vulnerable line doesn't show up. In other words, this host is not vulnerable since it's already been patched. Okay, so it's passed that check. Now, a way I could run that very same check across my infrastructure would be to right-click on the extended object output and I can actually run a very quick audit against all of my other Linux hosts to determine which of those are vulnerable and which are not. Okay. Method is good for those customers that don't have their patch catalogs created, but I'm going to actually take you through another method that will show you how to identify those using a patch catalog and a patch catalog smart group. I'm just going to collapse this group and I'm just going to open up my depot and take a look at my patch catalogs. Now, I've updated my Linux patch catalog with the Red Hat server this morning. So I have the latest and greatest metadata available for those, which include the patches that were covered by the errata I mentioned earlier. Now, if I expand this, I've also created a smart group that I've entitled Bash Exploit with the CVE number next to it, specific to the article that Red Hat had published earlier. Okay, there's my CVE 2046271. These are the erratas that are part of that vulnerability exposure. And what's actually done here is if I open this smart group, I created a condition that essentially filters all of the patches within this patch catalog to only display patches where the errata advisory parameter actually contains RSA-2014 semicolon 129. Okay, we'll cover all erratas from 129, 4, 3, 5, etc. As I expand this, I can see that in my catalog I only have one patch that applies that meets this condition, and I can that patch specifically deals with the security advisory to correct this bash vulnerability, and it includes the packages that Red Hat has published. If I want to scan environment to targets, I simply create a patch job. I'm just going to go into patch management here, and I'm going to create a patching job for my Red Hat Linux servers. Okay. And I'm going to get my Red Hat Bash patch scan job, storing patch management folder, and I'm going to use the Red Hat Linux patch catalog. Second option here allows me to further constrain which smart group or which patches within that catalog I'm going to scan against. Now, make sure you keep this analyze only for updates available. So this check here will only check those servers that actually have the bash package that is targeted for updates installed. And what I'm going to do is I want to actually go down to this includes excludes section and select the bash exploit smart group that I created within the patch catalog. And I'm going to choose to include only catalog entry or only this smart group as part of this scan. Okay, select next. I'm not going to create remediation artifacts at this point, just doing a scan. What I'm going to do is I'm going to target, again, all of my Red Hat Linux instances. So I'll just say all Red Hat smart group. Next, I'm going to put in notifications, and I'm going to say let's go ahead and execute this job now. Now, clearly that this job is going to start running. It's going to run that scan against those hosts, and if I right-click on the job and just pull up the results, here shortly, results of that scan. Itself will only take a few seconds here to complete. You can see this one has completed, and as I expand the results, I very quickly identify which of the targets were successfully executed. Here I can see that all 4 of my Linux servers were executed against. If I highlight this successful targets header here, I quickly see that Red server 1, 2, and 3 are missing the RPMs identified, whereas the real server itself actually has been installed, so it has not been identified as being missing. Quickly remediate this and install the patches that have been identified for these. I can simply right-click, remediate all servers. Now this is going to take me into a patch remediation job. So here I'm going to say remediate. I'm going to remediate the bash scan. And next, I'm going to go into my options. I'm just going to say let's go ahead and execute this job now after I submit it. Right, next, no notifications, and let and run. This is going to package up the packages that have been identified as remediation targets for these particular hosts, and it's going to kick off a quick deploy and install those packages against my hosts. Okay, see those are running down at the bottom. They'll only take a minute as well. To also, so that scan, you can see this is still running. With 3 running targets that we're executing this against, effectively applying those batch patterns. Right, that's what we did. So we can see that that job is finished. We have successful targets that have been applied. Now, if I go back and live browse those hosts again, let me pull up. This is Red Hat Server 1. This was a server that was previously identified as vulnerable. If I injection vulnerability check again, you can see that it's no longer vulnerable. And this applied to the other hosts. Since vulnerability has been addressed, it's been packaged and patched out of the Red Hat errata that was identified. And this would provide BladeLogic customers the very quick, short route to value to quickly identify and patch any red hat targets that they have in their environment that may be susceptible to this new vulnerability. Thank you very much.